How does a boy from a small rural town rise to the highest office in the land, only to redefine what it means to lead after leaving it? Born in the small farming community of Plains, Georgia, Jimmy Carter grew up amid the challenges of the Great Depression. His early life, shaped by hard work on his family's peanut farm and a deep commitment to faith and community, laid the foundation for a life of service. As the 39th President of the United States, Carter's vision extended beyond borders. His efforts at Camp David brought together nations once at odds, forging a peace agreement that would inspire generations. But it was after leaving the Oval Office that Carter's legacy truly flourished. Through his humanitarian work with Habitat for Humanity and global health initiatives at the Carter Center, he became a beacon of hope and compassion, touching millions of lives around the world. From the fields of Plains, Georgia, to the world stage as a peacemaker and humanitarian, this is the story of a man who never stopped serving. This is the story of Jimmy Carter, the president who put people first. The 1920s and 1930s in the United States were decades of stark contrast. On one hand, the nation was growing rapidly, embracing technological advancements, and shaping a modern identity. On the other, deep inequalities persisted, particularly in the rural South. It was a time when the promise of the American dream felt distant for many, as racial segregation and economic disparity defined daily life for millions. In the midst of this complex era, James Earl Carter Jr., known as Jimmy, was born on October 1, 1924, in the small town of Plains, Georgia. Plains, with a population of just a few hundred people, was a microcosm of the rural South, a place where agriculture dominated the economy and societal norms were deeply rooted in tradition. Jimmy's parents, Earl and Lillian Carter, were well-known figures in the community. Earl Carter, a farmer and businessman, owned a peanut warehouse and was known for his strict discipline and strong moral compass. Lillian Carter, or Miss Lillian as she was affectionately called, was a nurse with a reputation for kindness and breaking social barriers, often treating African American patients with the same care and respect as anyone else, an uncommon practice at the time. Jimmy grew up during one of the most challenging periods in American history, the Great Depression. For families like the Carters, life was a daily struggle to make ends meet. Farms across the South faced plummeting crop prices, and poverty was a constant companion. Yet, even in these harsh times, Plains was a place where community ties were strong. Neighbors helped one another, and values of hard work, resilience, and faith were woven into the fabric of everyday life. On the Carter farm, young Jimmy learned the value of labor early. As a boy, he spent his days plowing fields, planting peanuts, and tending to livestock alongside his father and siblings. Life on the farm was not glamorous, but it instilled in him a profound sense of discipline and responsibility. These early lessons would shape his character in ways he couldn't yet imagine. But the world outside the Carter farm was not without its challenges and contradictions. Growing up in the segregated South, Jimmy witnessed firsthand the racial injustices that divided his community. While many white families in Plains adhered to the status quo, Jimmy observed his mother's quiet defiance of these norms. Miss Lillian often provided medical care and support to black families in the area, a bold and compassionate stance that left a lasting impression on her son. These early experiences with inequality would resonate deeply with Jimmy as he grew older. They planted the seeds of a lifelong commitment to justice, fairness, and the belief that every human being deserves dignity and respect. principles that would later define his presidency and his work as a global humanitarian. Beyond the hardships, Jimmy's childhood in Plains was also filled with moments of joy and discovery. He had a natural curiosity about the world, often exploring the woods near the farm or tinkering with mechanical objects. His father's business ventures and his mother's profession as a nurse exposed him to the complexities of life, teaching him the importance of perseverance and the value of community service. In school, Jimmy excelled academically, displaying an early aptitude for leadership and problem-solving. Despite the economic difficulties of the time, his parents prioritized education, encouraging him to pursue his dreams beyond the confines of their small town. These formative years in Plains provided Jimmy with a deep sense of connection to his roots, even as he began to imagine a life beyond the fields of Georgia. As Jimmy Carter grew older, the values instilled in him during these years, hard work, faith, humility, and a commitment to service, became the guiding principles of his life. He would carry the lessons of Plains, Georgia, with him through every chapter of his journey, from his time as a naval officer to his years as governor, president, and beyond. Plains wasn't just the place where Jimmy Carter was born. It was the foundation upon which he built a life dedicated to improving the lives of others. In the fields and small town streets of this southern community, the seeds of leadership and compassion were sown, setting the stage for a life that would one day impact millions. For Jimmy Carter, the path to prominence was anything but straightforward. It was marked by personal loss, perseverance, and a steadfast commitment to his values. From the rigors of military service to the tumultuous world of politics, Carter's journey was a testament to his determination to make a difference. In 1943, during the height of World War II, Jimmy Carter entered the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. It was here that the young man from rural Georgia began to hone the discipline, leadership, and technical skills that would serve him throughout his life. The academy was a demanding environment and Carter excelled, graduating in the top 10% of his class in 1946. As a newly commissioned officer, Carter embarked on a career in the Navy, serving as a submarine officer. He quickly distinguished himself, working under the legendary Admiral Hyman Rickover, the father of the U.S. nuclear submarine program. Carter's assignments included managing complex systems and ensuring the safety of his crew, a responsibility he took with great seriousness. The experience instilled in him a meticulous attention to detail and a deep respect for leadership rooted in accountability and teamwork. In 1953, Jimmy Carter's promising naval career was interrupted by a profound personal loss. His father, Earl Carter, passed away, leaving behind the family farm and a business that needed to be managed. Though Jimmy and Rosalind were living a comfortable life on naval bases, the call of duty to his family and his roots was undeniable. Jimmy resigned his commission and returned to Plains with his wife and young children. Taking over the family's peanut farm was no small task. The operation was struggling, and the Carters faced significant financial challenges. But Jimmy approached the situation with the same determination he had shown in the Navy. Through hard work and careful management, he revitalized the business, learning valuable lessons about economics, agriculture, and the challenges facing rural America. It was during these years in Plains that Jimmy Carter began to see the disparities and injustices in his community more clearly. The racial inequalities he had witnessed as a boy were now issues he wanted to address directly. Inspired by a sense of civic duty and guided by his faith, Carter decided to enter politics. In 1962, he was elected to the Georgia State Senate, where he quickly gained a reputation for integrity and reform. Carter's time in the Georgia Senate set the stage for a larger political role. In 1970, he launched a campaign for governor of Georgia. It was a contentious race, taking place during a period of deep division in the South over issues of civil rights and integration. Carter ran as a moderate, and his victory was seen as a turning point for the state. In his inaugural address, he shocked many by declaring, "The time for racial discrimination is over," signaling his commitment to a new era of inclusion and progress. By the mid-1970s, Jimmy Carter had set his sights on the presidency. It was an audacious goal for a little-known governor from Georgia, but Carter believed he could restore trust in government following the Watergate scandal. His campaign emphasized honesty, transparency, and a focus on the needs of ordinary Americans. Carter faced an uphill battle. As an outsider in Washington, he was often dismissed by political insiders. Yet, he connected with voters on a personal level, traveling across the country to meet people face to face and listen to their concerns. This grassroots approach, combined with his clear message of integrity, resonated with a nation longing for moral leadership. In 1976, Jimmy Carter won the presidency, defeating incumbent Gerald Ford. His victory was a triumph not only for Carter, but for the ideals of honesty and service he represented. Throughout his rise to prominence, one figure remained a constant source of strength and guidance for Jimmy Carter: his wife, Rosalind. The two had married in 1946, shortly after Carter's graduation from the Naval Academy, and their partnership became a cornerstone of his personal and political life. Rosalind Carter was far more than a traditional First Lady. She shared Jimmy's vision of service and was deeply involved in his political campaigns and initiatives. As governor, she traveled extensively across Georgia, meeting with citizens and advocating for mental health reform, a cause close to her heart. As First Lady, she took on a prominent role, advising her husband and championing issues such as caregiving and human rights. Jimmy often said that Rosalind was his most trusted advisor. Their partnership was one of mutual respect and shared purpose, a dynamic that shaped not only their personal lives but their contributions to public service. Together, Jimmy and Rosalind Carter demonstrated that leadership is not a solo endeavor but a collaborative effort grounded in shared values and a commitment to making the world a better place. Jimmy Carter's rise to prominence was defined by his ability to navigate challenges with grace and resolve. Whether as a naval officer, a farmer, or a political leader, he carried with him the lessons of his upbringing: hard work, faith, and a belief in the power of service. By the time he reached the presidency, Carter had already built a legacy of integrity and resilience. But his greatest challenges and triumphs still lay ahead. Jimmy Carter's presidency, though often overshadowed by the challenges he faced, was marked by a bold vision and significant achievements. It was a time when Carter sought not only to address immediate issues, but also to lay a foundation for long-term progress, both at home and abroad. Perhaps the most defining achievement of Carter's presidency was the Camp David Accords, a groundbreaking peace agreement between Egypt and Israel. In September 1978, Carter invited Egyptian President Anwar Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin to the presidential retreat at Camp David. For 13 days, Carter worked tirelessly as a mediator, navigating decades of hostility and mistrust between the two leaders. The negotiations were grueling, marked by moments of near collapse. At one point, Sadat threatened to leave, while Begin expressed deep reservations about concessions. But Carter's persistence and personal engagement made the difference. He appealed to their shared humanity, reminding them of the stakes for their peoples and the opportunity to change history. On September 17, 1978, the Camp David Accords were signed. The agreement led to the first peace treaty between Israel and an Arab nation, a monumental step towards stability in the Middle East. Carter's role as a peacemaker earned him global recognition, though the challenges of maintaining that peace would linger for years to come. Domestically, Carter faced an energy crisis that threatened the nation's economy and security. Determined to address America's dependence on foreign oil, he championed an ambitious energy policy focused on conservation, efficiency, and the development of renewable energy sources. In a nationally televised speech, Carter called the energy crisis the moral equivalent of war, urging Americans to change their consumption habits and embrace a future of sustainability. Under his leadership, the Department of Energy was created, and significant investments were made in solar and wind power, as well as energy-efficient technologies. Carter also installed solar panels on the White House, symbolizing his commitment to clean energy. While his initiatives faced resistance and were often overshadowed by short-term economic challenges, they laid the groundwork for future advancements in renewable energy. Carter's presidency also redefined U.S. foreign policy with a focus on human rights. He believed that America's strength lay not just in its military and economic power, but in its moral leadership. His administration prioritized the promotion of democracy, freedom, and the protection of human dignity around the world. This commitment was evident in Carter's approach to Latin America, where he pushed for the end of military dictatorships and supported transitions to democratic governance. In countries like Argentina and Chile, his administration condemned human rights abuses and provided support for pro-democracy movements. Carter's human rights agenda was groundbreaking, but it was not without controversy. Critics argued that his focus on moral principles sometimes complicated relationships with strategic allies. Yet, Carter remained steadfast, believing that the United States had a responsibility to lead by example. Another significant achievement of Carter's presidency was the negotiation of the Panama Canal Treaties. Signed in 1977, these agreements transferred control of the canal from the United States to Panama, ending decades of tension and resentment in the region. The decision was not an easy one. Many in Congress and the American public opposed the treaties, viewing them as a relinquishment of U.S. power. But Carter believed that returning the canal to Panama was a matter of fairness and an opportunity to strengthen U.S.-Latin American relations. Ultimately, the treaties were ratified, marking a new chapter in hemispheric diplomacy. Carter's presidency also saw significant strides in environmental conservation. He expanded the national park system, designating millions of acres of wilderness in Alaska as protected lands. The Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act of 1980, signed during his final months in office, remains one of the most substantial land conservation acts in U.S. history. Carter's vision for environmental stewardship extended beyond legislation. He believed that protecting natural resources was a moral obligation to future generations, an ethos that resonated with his lifelong connection to the land. But as Carter reached new heights, the seeds of political struggle were already being sown. The energy crisis, economic challenges, and a growing sense of discontent among voters began to overshadow his achievements. While Carter focused on the long term, many Americans were grappling with immediate frustrations. The Middle East peace process, though a triumph, required constant vigilance to maintain. Domestically, his energy policies faced pushback from industries and politicians resistant to change. And on the world stage, new challenges were emerging that would test the limits of Carter's vision and leadership. As his presidency progressed, the gap between his aspirations and the realities of governing in a divided nation grew wider. The years ahead would reveal the resilience of Carter's principles and the weight of his struggles. Jimmy Carter's presidency was a period of bold ideas and enduring contributions. From brokering peace in the Middle East to championing human rights and environmental conservation, he sought to lead with integrity and purpose. But the road ahead would not be easy. The challenges of leadership, both seen and unforeseen, would soon cast a shadow over his time in office. Jimmy Carter's journey didn't end when he left the Oval Office. In many ways, his greatest legacy began after his presidency, as he redefined what it means to serve, showing the world that leadership is not about power, but about compassion, humility, and impact. When Jimmy Carter returned to Plains, Georgia, in 1981, he could have faded into the background of history, living quietly as a former president. But Carter saw his post-presidency not as a retreat, but as a new chapter of service. Alongside Rosalind, he founded the Carter Center, an organization dedicated to advancing human rights and alleviating suffering worldwide. The Carter Center became a beacon of hope for countless people across the globe. It focused on combating diseases that disproportionately affect the world's most vulnerable populations. Through its efforts, diseases like guinea worm, once a scourge in many countries, were nearly eradicated, saving millions from unnecessary suffering. Carter also led initiatives to prevent river blindness and malaria, working tirelessly to bring healthcare to underserved regions. Beyond health, the Carter Center was instrumental in promoting democracy. Under Carter's guidance, the center monitored over 100 elections in 39 countries, ensuring fairness and transparency. In some of the world's most fragile democracies, his presence alone inspired trust and credibility, reminding nations of the importance of free and fair elections. Carter's dedication to service extended beyond global diplomacy. He and Rosalind became hands-on volunteers with Habitat for Humanity, an organization dedicated to providing affordable housing to those in need. For decades, they traveled the world, hammer in hand, working side by side with families to build homes and futures. By 2020, the Carters had contributed to the construction of more than 4,300 homes in 14 countries. Carter's image, clad in a hard hat and tool belt, smiling as he worked in the sun, became an enduring symbol of his commitment to uplifting others. For Jimmy Carter, Habitat for Humanity wasn't just about building houses. It was about fostering dignity, stability, and hope for families. It was a way to show that service can be as simple as lending a hand and as profound as transforming lives. Through his post-presidency, Jimmy Carter taught the world that leadership doesn't require a title. It requires a willingness to serve, to empathize, and to act for the greater good. His life is a testament to the idea that even in the face of setbacks and challenges, one can create lasting change. As Carter himself once said, "I have one life and one chance to make it count for something. My faith demands that I do whatever I can, wherever I can, whenever I can, for as long as I can." These words encapsulate the spirit of a man who never stopped striving to make the world a better place. Jimmy Carter's efforts did not go unnoticed. In 2002, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his decades of unwavering commitment to peace, democracy, and human rights. In his acceptance speech, he reflected on the challenges and responsibilities of leadership, stating, "War may sometimes be a necessary evil, but no matter how necessary, it is always an evil, never a good. We will not learn to live together in peace by killing each other's children." These words echoed his lifelong belief in the power of diplomacy and the sanctity of human life. World leaders have spoken of Carter's unique legacy. Nelson Mandela once described him as a rare type of leader who uses his position to lift others, not himself. Former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan called Carter a true statesman who embodies the principles of humanity and justice. Even decades after his presidency, Carter remained a source of inspiration for those seeking to lead with integrity. In the words of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Jimmy Carter is proof that true greatness is measured not by the power you wield, but by the kindness you show to the least of these. Such tributes reflect the deep admiration Carter earned, not just as a politician, but as a man of principle and compassion. Jimmy Carter's life is a masterclass in servant leadership. From the fields of Plains, Georgia, to the highest office in the land, and then to the farthest corners of the globe, he dedicated himself to the idea that everyone deserves dignity, opportunity, and hope. In a time when the world craved leadership, Jimmy Carter showed us what it means to truly put people first. His legacy reminds us that the measure of a life well lived is not the titles we hold, but the lives we touch. And for Jimmy Carter, the lives he touched will continue to tell his story for generations to come. In his later years, Jimmy Carter faced health challenges with the same resilience and grace that defined his life. In 2015, at the age of 90, he was diagnosed with metastatic melanoma that had spread to his brain and liver. Demonstrating remarkable fortitude, Carter underwent treatment, including immunotherapy and radiation, and by December of that year, he announced that his medical scans no longer showed any cancer. Despite his advancing age, Carter remained active, continuing his humanitarian work and teaching Sunday school in his hometown of Plains, Georgia. However, in 2019, he experienced a series of falls that resulted in injuries, including a fractured hip and pelvis. Each time, he recovered and returned to his community activities, embodying a spirit of determination and service. In February 2023, after a series of short hospital stays, Carter chose to receive hospice care at his home, reflecting his acceptance and preparedness for the final chapter of his life. Surrounded by family and the familiar comforts of his Plains residence, he spent his remaining time in peace. On December 29, 2024, Jimmy Carter passed away at the age of 100, becoming the longest-lived U.S. president in history. His death marked the end of a remarkable journey, a life dedicated to service, peace, and the betterment of humanity. As we reflect on Carter's extraordinary journey, let us also consider the lessons his life offers us. Leadership is not confined to grand stages or lofty positions. It is found in the everyday acts of service and compassion that make our communities stronger. Jimmy Carter believed in the power of individuals to affect change, no matter how small the gesture. Today, his work lives on through the initiatives he championed, from the Carter Center's global health programs to the homes built by Habitat for Humanity. But Carter's legacy is not his alone. It is a call to action for all of us. Join us in honoring his memory and spirit by finding ways to serve in your community. Whether it's helping a neighbor, volunteering for a cause, or advocating for justice, each of us has the power to make a difference. Together, we can carry forward the ideals that Jimmy Carter devoted his life to. As the sun sets on Plains, Georgia, we are reminded that the measure of a life is not found in its accolades, but in its impact. Jimmy and Rosalind Carter, hand in hand, walking toward home, embody the quiet strength and and enduring love that have guided their journey. We must adjust to changing times and still hold to unchanging principles. From a peanut farmer to the president, and then to a global humanitarian, Jimmy Carter's life is a testament to the power of humility, perseverance, and faith. His story will continue to inspire generations to lead with integrity, serve with purpose, and put people first.